and get started. There we go. And we'll start on the topic for the day. I wanted to talk about what do you have to do to maintain the equipment in your shop? What are the maintenance things you work on, and how do you go about keeping things running the way you want to? And I don't have any pictures to share today, but I thought we'd talk a little bit about what all everybody does, and let's see what we can learn from each other. So anybody want to start?
I can share this is not routine maintenance, but I can share what happened to me recently with my lathe. And I know this has been a problem for others. Over the last week and a half, I was using my jet lathe and it was working fine. I stopped to grab some sandpaper or something and it would not restart. This happened about 2 weeks ago. And I went through and did a few things I thought might help. I checked with Rick Davis. He made some suggestions. And ultimately, I unplugged it and left it overnight. And the next day, it worked fine. Well, a few days ago, earlier this week, it happened again. I was using the lathe just fine, and it would not restart. So I got in touch with Jet Technical Service, and they advised that I unplug it, unplug the machine, grab some compressed air, blow in the pulley area in the headstock and around the switch, flip the switch about 10 different times, then plug it in and try it. I did that and it worked. And it turns out that the dust is getting inside the switch. And in the jet case, I also have a remote stop switch. They said it could also get in there and cause a problem. I bring this up because the club owns a jet almost identical to mine. I've got an 1840, the club has a 1640. And so that problem could occur with the club lathe also. And it's a matter of blowing out the dust. I know that Dennis Egan has had that problem. He was relating that to some of us at the board meeting just Tuesday, and the solution was the same thing. So periodically blowing dust out of your lathe switch is strongly advised. Has
Cool.
anyone else had that problem?
I had that problem with Powermatic, and it just uses the same switch as your jet does, and it just got built up. But it's an A model, so it's about as old as I am, and and it. I couldn't get the switch cleaned out, so I just put a new switch on it, and I purchased it from Granger, identical switch, and it worked fine after I changed the switch.
Bill, how much did your switch cost from Granger?
I think it was about $30.
Because I've had trouble with my switch, and I went to Walmart of all places online.
Yeah.
And for like less than $10, you can buy a new switch.
Same.
You reminded me last time, so I'm reminding you this time about $50.
Well, that may not have been $30. It's been
What?
5 years ago or something like that.
Someone is
It's been
talking in the
working ever
background. Okay.
It's 8:45.
Who is
Mark,
that?
you might want to mute your
Ah.
Zoom session. We can hear you talking in the background.
You had a what? Oh, okay. All right.
There, I muted him.
Good. What I
So,
found out, and it surprised me, that these switches are not closed. There's some openings for airflow. And because it puzzled me, how can it possibly help if I'm blowing into the pulley area in the headstock? How could that possibly help the switch? Well, apparently there are some small openings in the switch housing that are exposed to that area in the headstock. So the idea is just blow some air through that area. You can't blow directly into the back of the switch because I couldn't reach it in my case. But also blow around the front openings, pull the lock key out and blow through any openings you can get compressed air into. And it worked this time.
on my particular unit, let's see, why doesn't mine come up show when I talk? That's interesting.
There's a switch that you have that
There we go.
can hide your self view.
On my lathe, which is a Grizzly, you can pull the door open and easily reach in, unscrew it from the panel, and then you can blow at it from all sides. Works pretty slick. So.
Good design. Hey, Bruce,
Yes, sir.
I just posted a link in the meeting chat to an article I received. Actually, I received it this morning in my email inbox from Kent Weekly, who usually does a pretty good job. And coincidentally, it's a checklist for lathe maintenance.
Can everybody see that on their screen now?
No.
Oh, rats.
Yeah,
It
go to
shows
the
on mine.
chat. I posted
Yeah,
it for
I've
everyone
been
in
to
the
chat and I've got it up. Okay, wait a minute. Let's go back to here.
Now, I haven't gone through the article yet, so I'm not sure of just what it contains and that, but I know Kent usually does a pretty good job.
Rick Davis will be joining us pretty soon. He had to give blood this morning, so he's on his way back to his house.
Got it.
I didn't know he played hockey.
Yeah, I just followed that link, Jay, and I think I've looked at this before, and it is a very good list of suggested maintenance items.
Okay.
Can you see that I've clicked on the chat thing? Does that now show on the video?
No,
Rats.
you
Okay.
would have to share it. And I haven't tried, so I don't know if you can share a chat screen, and maybe not, because everybody on has access to
Has
that chat
access to it.
screen.
Yeah.
No, you can't share a chat screen. However, if anybody does click on it, it will bring it up so they can bookmark it. Also, the chat screen will not carry over in the recording, just so you know that. Jay, would you maybe add that as one of the links on the website since it's been discussed here?
It's already done on my to-do list, which, by the way, I have a Word document that has, now I'm up to 2 pages of postings for the website of things I want to add. However, I'm only doing 3 at a time, so I'll get this up there.
Okay, otherwise I'd put it in the newsletter, but the newsletter will be another 2 months away.
Yeah, I'll get it on the next iteration of the website.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank-
Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. So we've had talks about the switch. What do you do to keep your ways in good shape?
Clean them all the time.
And what do you clean them with?
Well, I take some kind of, I normally take one of these scouring pads first, like the synthetic steel wool. You know, rub them down good with that. You know, wipe them off with some solvent. I got solid for taking wax and everything off. And I re-wax them, and it just, that's probably the biggest amount of maintenance I have in the lathe is keeping those ways clean enough and slippery enough so things move on it.
What do you use for a wax?
Good old Johnson's and paste wax.
Mhm.
found
I use
that
the
works
same
for
thing.
what drink I put on there.
Yeah, it's the same thing I do.
Jim,
Yeah.
do you put any kind of liquid on it? I use kerosene to like the top of the table saw or the lathe base. Just use some kerosene and that cleans it off really good. Kerosene has oil in it. You definitely don't want to use any other cleaners like oh, I don't know, denatured alcohol or something like that. But kerosene works pretty good. Clean it off real good and then put the wax on. Does anybody else do that?
I would suggest, and I've been using for a long time, Johnson's paste wax.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I would do after I got it all clean and free of any rust or other stuff on there. But paste wax, you're right, and does work really good. But I was just curious if anybody else uses kerosene or any other kind of cleaner.
I've not used any solvents, Mark. I do the Johnson paste wax, and I just have an old piece of, I think like 80 grit Abernet or something. I just leave it in the can. And every time I clean the ways, I use that with the paste wax, and the abrasive in the sandpaper and the wax seem to take anything off, and I haven't had a need for a solvent. But I also don't paint or finish much on my lathe, so I don't normally get too many finish materials on the lathe bed. But I found just the abrasive and the wax are enough to clean it off. But I also periodically take off the banjo and the tailstock and clean the underside of those, and that helps a lot too. Good idea.
A long time ago, I took a workshop with John Jordan, and his recommendation was every morning before you get started to clean it off and use WD-40. Just make it a regular thing.
Are you speaking primarily about cleaning the bed?
Yes. The bed and also the bottom of the banjo and the tailstock.
How would you clean the bottom of the banjo? You have to take it off?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, anything, how often do you check the alignment on the tailstock and the headstock?
Only when I'm suspicious that it's out of alignment.
That would be my answer too.
I do it occasionally, probably, I don't know how often, maybe at least once a month. It doesn't move, but I'm always concerned that there's going to be some vibration if it is moved.
I've got two lathes. My one way always stays in alignment, and my jet is never in alignment. So I've got no surprises.
So on the average, you're okay, huh?
Yeah.
Bruce, we're talking about switches. I also had another switch problem on my bandsaw come up this past week. Similar to the lathe, I was working using the bandsaw just fine, stopped it to do something, wouldn't restart. Of course, by now I knew to blow it out with compressed air. That didn't do anything. So I actually got out my multimeter and I tested the switch and it looked like it was failed. So I found a new switch on Amazon for, I think it was $17. It was an exact replacement and it was a very easy fix to take the old switch out and put the new switch in, and it's running just fine. So switches do fail.
Ken, how did you find that online?
I just did a Google, well, I did an Amazon search for, I had opened up and pulled the existing switch out and used the model number on that switch in Amazon to see, and it came up with exactly the same replacement. In fact, not only that, the one I had was a push button on off or stop start switch, but they also had the exact same switch with a paddle as the option built into it. But it was by the same company, same model. It was an exact replacement.
One of the things you can also do in searching is to search for, take your phone, go to Google, and when Google comes up, in the search bar, there's a picture of a little camera there. Take that, engage that, and move that over so that you can see the item you're searching for, and then tap it, and it'll then go search for things that look like that image.
Well,
Yeah, that's some of the later technology. One of the things I tend to do is in the owner's manual or instruction manuals, I keep the replacement parts lists that comes with most machines. So you have a reference point that at least you can get some kind of a code or something. But I think, Ken, that your idea is probably the best. Just look at the item and get the codes off of it.
Yeah, if you can disassemble the item and look for those key model numbers, that's the best way to find a replacement. But yeah, I keep the user manuals too with parts lists. And it turns out the parts list for my bandsaw did not give me the same information that the actual switch did. So I'm not sure I could have actually replaced it from the manual information, other than going to who's this Shopfox and ordering their special part. But by looking at the switch itself, it was a simple search.
Ken, I have I guess a tangential question. How did you find working with Jet's support as far as getting through to them, getting answers, and basically the overall use of their tech support?
It was actually fairly good because if you just call, you get put on hold forever. But they also have an online contact me sort of thing, and they will, you can put in a brief description of the problem and your phone number, and they will call back. Well, they did call me back within, I think, 2 hours or less. And having put that information online first gave him the heads up. It actually by doing that online, it created a case number. Then he was able to see that information before he even called me back. And then once he called back, he was not in a hurry. He helped walk me through several different troubleshooting steps and stayed on the line, didn't feel like he was urgent. He really wanted to stick with me until it was a resolved issue. So I have to say they did very good technical support once I finally got through to them.
That's good to know.
Well, and then aside from that, though, the Jet, what's the blower thing that's on the ceiling called? That that was a little more challenging as far as Jet was concerned.
The air filtration system that we have it was a different problem. And again, I had a lot of good discussions with Jet, but they weren't coming up with good answers. The problem in that case, they actually sent me, the unit was turning itself on without any kind of, our interference, that we didn't think it was interference. It turns out they were checking and said, do you have any LED lights nearby? Well, we do. And they said, well, put this cardboard shield up around the control panel, but it didn't do anything. Then they sent me a replacement circuit board. I put that in, same problem. They sent me a second replacement circuit board, put that in, no problem. Then we just inadvertently found out that Kathy, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kathy turned on a switch for a light in our kitchen and the fan came on. And so she went, turned the switch off, the fan went off. We've traced this down and found out that that particular circuit, the fan was connected to that same circuit in our kitchen. So this is garage and kitchen. And it turns out there's some LED light bulbs and a chandelier in that circuit. Those specific LED lights, or I think GE brand, must have been interfering with the circuit board, because I changed to a different circuit and the problem went away completely. But Jet never did clue into that part of having an LED problem. We had LED lights nearby in different circuits, didn't have anything to do with it. It was only the LED lights in the same circuit that caused the problem. Bottom line is Jet helped a lot. They helped try to troubleshoot it. They just didn't have the right answer.
Well, and the lights are not close to the garage at all. It's about a room and a half away. There was no
Yeah.
way to connect the two. It was a very odd situation. But didn't you even take it to a Jet?
Yeah, I took it into Prescott Tool. They couldn't find any problems with it. And Jet covered that expense too. So Jet technical support, I think, was good. They were on top of it. They just didn't have the right answer in that case.
That's interesting. So meanwhile, you have 2 extra circuit boards and we can build a couple new units.
I've got them. Just let me know if you need them.
I wish I had the time. That's good to know, because I've only had one experience with Jet support, and I did the online contact form regarding an issue with a drum sander and never heard back from them. I think I submitted 3 different requests, and I got so frustrated with the telephone that you're on hold forever.
Yeah.
Waiting for him. But it's good to hear that you had a good response and good result from that. That's encouraging.
Were you on the woodworking side of the Jet? Because they have some other metalworking stuff too, and I can't speak to them.
Yeah, and it was all woodworking related, because I don't know much about metal.
Well, my experience with the Jet technical service was positive, I'd say.
Yeah,
Not perfect, but positive.
that's good. Encouraging.
Since we're talking about technical support, I did have an issue when I bought my Laguna lathe, plugged it in and to a socket on the wall, and turned the machine on, and it immediately tripped the at the power box. What do you call it? The
Circuit
switch.
breaker.
Thank you, circuit breaker. So the circuit breaker immediately just tripped, and I did it several times. I go back and turn it back on and plug it in, turn it on, and boom. But on the socket itself, there was no GFI on it. But what I discovered is there's a GFI switch on another circuit. So this was a continuation of that. And I called Laguna and I said, what is the problem here? And once I mentioned GFI, he said, oh, you cannot plug that into a GFI protected circuit. It will trip it. So, but talking to them, it was very easy and knowledgeable. He knew right away what the issue was. So, so anyway, I switched out the socket that had the GFI on it, which fed the socket that I was plugging into. So once I switched that GFI for a standard outlet, problem solved. You know, so might want to keep that in mind if you ever have that issue. So
The rule of thumb is GFIs and motors do not mix.
Right.
well, and I didn't know that,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
and GFIs, I guess, are good for bathroom, kitchen, and all that, anywhere you have water, but not for motors, like you said. So
I had to, when I redid my shop, I had to talk to the inspector that came out to look at it, because he says, wait a minute, you may get water down here. Why don't you have that on GFI? And I politely explained to him about, well, GFIs and motors don't mix very well. He says, yep, you're right. He says, okay, I'll class this as a different use, so you can go ahead and use it. So he went ahead and approved the area. Okay, what about bandsaws? What do you do to get the bandsaw keeping it in tune? How well do you do your alignments, and do you do anything with the blade or the wheels? Or
well, I
find, What's
oh,
it set up?
go ahead.
Go ahead, Rick.
Go ahead. Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Jim.
Jim.
I find that my bandsaw really, all the settings, right, like the how you put the little hole things that up in the blade to support it and all that kind of things, they stay in place real well. And really, the whole thing is changing the blade. I put one in the other day now, and it went right in, and I centered it on the wheels like it should be, and everything seemed to be right in where it should be. Tightened up, started up, cut a couple of pieces, and it worked fine. I've been doing it for years now with that thing, and it's I blow it out, clean it up good when I do put a new blade on, but it's I find it's like your clearances with you know, things you put like your wheel and back of the blade, all those things. If you put the blade on the same spot, it's right there. I've never had any problem with it, and I use it a lot.
So do you always use the same thickness blade?
Same thickness and same size. I mean, I normally use 3/8 blades, something different amount of teeth on them, but I don't change blades all the time. If you do, then you got to go through all the adjustments with all the supports for it. And I find I've cut some pretty good sized logs and everything else with 3/8 blades, and no problem. And I don't do a lot of these.
I try to vacuum out the wheel areas every time I've finished using the bandsaw. I also release the tension, and I have a magnet that has a tension on one side and tension off on the other that I put on the front so that I can remind myself that it's either under tension or not. When I change a blade, which I hate to do, it always takes an hour to just readjust it. But when I do that, I always use some solvent to clean off the wheels. It just routinely builds up some stuff there. I use spray of CMT, I think it is, for removing resin from saw blades and other things. But other than that, other than replacing bearings when they've worn out, there's not a lot of other maintenance on a bandsaw.
Is that
One thing you
CMT
do, Ken-
something that? Is the CMT something that would dry out the rubber on the wheel of the bandsaw?
It hasn't, so far, I've had no problems with the rubber on the wheels, and I think it's advertised as, that's one of the uses.
Okay,
I picked it up, I think, at Home Depot or Lowe's, somewhere like that.
You
Well,
bet before, one thing I do, I have a paper note taped to the front of it to always to take the tension off the blade and the retention before I start. So I have to see it. So I remember to do it every time. And
Well, I'll tell you something I learned from Spence. I went to his workshop for, I can't remember what it was. I think we were working on a olive wood project. Anyway, on his bandsaw, and Spence, jump in here while I describe this if I get it wrong, but he has a little placard sign that says switch off, I think, or on or something. Anyway, it hangs over the switch. And I'm sorry, what was that?
Says tension.
Tension. Okay, so it has it hanging over the on-off switch. And I had not seen that before ever. And I asked Spence, what is this for? And then he explained to me how the tension, the blade kind of buries into that little rubber seal around the wheel. And you don't really want that. So so he takes that tension off when he's not using it. So I adopted that idea. I put the placard on a little hook over my on-off switch. So when I'm using it, I put the tension on and put the placard in a different location, and then do the reverse. So thanks to Spence for for that little tips and tricks there. And if anybody else can use that information, then more power to you.
let me explain the importance of doing that.
Okay.
As most of you know, I winter in Palm Springs. So my shop sits empty from about December 20th till sometime in April usually. Well, last year, my bandsaw blade wore out, so I put a new one on. Everything was fine. Went off to Palm Springs, came back, found out I left a tension on the bandsaw blade the entire time I was gone. I made about 2 cuts with it and the blade broke.
Hmm.
So it's important to take that tension off the blade.
Well,
Yes, besides what Mark said about having impressions in the rubber, keeping that metal under tension can develop micro cracks that will then be aggravated when you start to put it under more stress. So releasing that tension is important for the actual material of the bandsaw blade.
right. I just really like the visual reminder of that little placard and hanging right over the on-off switch. So it really worked for me, and that's why I wanted to pass it on, even though I got the idea from Spence. So,
Doesn't matter if it works.
well, yeah, that's true, but that's where it came from. So I'm thankful for that.
I don't know where I got it, but my suspicion is I probably got it from Craft Supply.
Yeah, wherever it came from, it is a good idea. Like I say, the visual thing, it works for me in a lot of other areas as well. But I pass that information on to anybody that visits my workshop, and I show them that, oh, good idea, so it helps to spread the word.
Change the subject. Ken, I'm interested. I was curious. Why does it take you an hour to change a blade?
Well, I have a shop fox and they
So do I.
did not, well, they didn't design it very well for access to adjust the rollers, particularly underneath the table. But I would adjust it and run it by hand and then turn it on and it would get out of adjustment again. So it seems tricky to be able to fine tune it to where it's actually running the way I want it to. Maybe you've got some tips and tricks that I need to come over and learn from you, because I routinely have a problem with readjusting after putting a new blade on.
What kind of what kind of pinch roller do you have? Is it a metal one or is it ceramic, or
No, they're the ball bearing type.
is the ball bearing inside in it in a big wheel?
There's a ball bearing behind the blade and then two, one on each side of the blade that goes right behind the teeth. And the mechanism they have to adjust that distance between the blade and the bearings is pretty flaky. And
It's an actual ball bearing.
oh yeah, they're ball
See,
bearings.
Mine's not. Mine is a round disc about at least an inch in diameter. And I've got two of them that are like this, and I just move them together so that they just miss the blade. And because I use the same thickness of blade each time, the only real adjustment I have to make is the in and out adjustment depending on the width of the blade. And it takes me literally 2 minutes, maybe.
You must have a different design than my shop fox does, because I have two bearings and they're on eccentric. And I have to loosen up a set screw, turn those, and each eccentric is off a little bit. And then every time I tighten it down, it wants to move them a little bit more. Those adjustments just never want to go together right. And every time I try to tighten down the final set screw, it takes them out of alignment again.
Mine doesn't have that at all. My bearings just move in and out, and they're vertical. And
Okay.
even to set the speed, I can just take my fingers and squeeze them together a little bit, and then and I can actually go right up to the blade, and then I loosen it up a little. That's it. And when I change blades, I don't ever mess with that. I do it on a preventive maintenance basis on a maybe once a month or so, but that's it. That's very
You've got a
interesting.
much better design than mine has then.
What size bandsaw is it?
It's a 14-inch bandsaw and I have a 6-inch riser on it.
Okay. Mine's my drive wheel is 19 inches.
Okay. Yeah, different model. They may have improved the design for that.
That's very,
With that size, it may be more of a commercial product, whereas mine is a home use type of model.
Hey, Ken,
Yes.
I got a Jet 14-inch, and it's just basically the same as your shop fox. And I just take the bed off, line everything up, put the bed back on.
Somebody recently suggested that to me also. I don't know, maybe it was Rick. Somebody, when we had our demo over here, that came up somehow, and somebody else suggested the same thing. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
That would be much easier to get to the lower adjustments.
and you can adjust them up and get them the way you want them, and I use a feeler gauge in there. I don't remember exactly. It's in my box. the same feeler gauge each time. But there was a shop teacher down in Tucson when I lived there, taught me that, told me about that, and that's been 15 years ago. And I just automatically take the top off, put the new blades in it, because I usually change the size of blade. I don't use the same size all the time, and that's what it helped.
What's involved in
And-
taking the top off, Bill?
Two little wing nuts
Mhm.
under, where you adjust it for your tilt. Yeah, you turn it 2 knobs off and lift it and turn it sideways and slide it off your blade. Try it.
Yeah, mine is
and
that way too, and I just haven't tried that yet. Next time I change blades, I'm definitely gonna do that.
I just do it automatically. It takes me probably 15, 20 minutes to completely adjust everything up. And I've been doing it for years that way, so it just becomes second habit,
Mhm.
Anything else on bandsaws?
Hello to Rick. He finally joined us.
Now,
Hi there.
oh, good. You can hear me. I had these external speakers on, and I think they were muting out the microphone. So I said to Ken that Carter Products, they sell a set of blade guides that are very easy to use, and you can replace the ones that you have on your
Mm.
parent saw. I don't think they're very expensive, but they're very easy to work with.
But I could look into that, and just my concern would be, does it fit this model of Shop Fox?
I think they have them, Ken, that are adaptable to almost anyone. But with Fox, Shop Fox being a pretty popular one, I think it works. And the thing that I find out with detensioning your blade is that when you get finished making your cut, well, the blade's still running. And if you're like me, I walk away with the thing I just cut, and then I have to remember to come back later. But there's a few things that I have to remember in my shop when I come in, and it's to turn off the air compressor and to make sure I detension the bandsaw. So I have a little plaque by the back door going in that I see it every time I go in, and I very often forget to do the detension the blade.
That's why I have a magnet right on the upper case of my bandsaw. And the magnet on one side says tension on, the magnet on the other side says off. I'm just in the habit of, when I turn the tension on, I flip it. And when I'm finished with the bandsaw for the day, after, as a part of the cleanup process, then I flip that back over after I take the tension off. And I make sure I don't flip the sign if it doesn't match the actual tension.
Yeah, well, I have a big arm on the side of mine that you tension it by putting the arm up. So when the
Oh.
tension's on, it's very visible at what it is. I just have to remember after I've used the bandsaw to go back to it, because, it coasts for a long time before the blade stops turning. So that's what I deal with it.
Well, I always clean up the shop area before going in the house for the day. And that's just one of those mental checks. Did I remember to flip or turn the tension off on that, clean up other things around the work area?
My apologies for not being here at the start, Bruce, but I had to have blood drawn for a doctor test. And I was over at the hospital this morning. So please excuse me, people.
You're excused, no problem.
Thank you.
How
I have
about
a
drop-
question.
Go ahead.
Does anybody know of a local place that sharpens planer blades? I've tried to sharpen them on my own and it doesn't work. I don't have the precision.
Does the McGinnis saw sharpening place do planer blades?
A good question. I know. Is that the place on Willow Creek?
It's McGinnis is actually saw sharpening over in it's not Dewey. It's actually in Mayer.
Oh,
But that's the place where I know John Armstrong sends all of the Yavapai College blades over there. I've done the same thing. I had a table saw blade that threw a tooth. They repaired that. I think they're the only saw service in the area, and they may or may not do planer blades. I just don't know.
Isn't that the place we toured one time?
You may have, I think the club did tour that. It was before my time. But it's McGinnis
Aha.
saw
You see
service.
that? Hang on a minute. I gotta get this. Keep it up there, Pete. I'm getting you.
Well,
I
if
gotta
Pete
highlight
starts
this.
talking, that will go to the big screen, right?
Well, Pete, I just gotta up. There we go.
Hold
Hold
it
your
up and
phone
then
up
start
again.
talking. Hold it up and then start talking.
Now you gotta get your phone back on. Phone went out. It's all black, Pete. There we go. Got that, Spence?
hold on. Is that 6367?
Yes.
6367.
Yeah, I got it. I'll give him a call and see what happens.
I
Thank
have
you.
another phone number for it too. It came up on Google. 928-632-9405. But they are on Poland Road in Mayer.
Yeah. And
You
the heck
guys-
of it, if you call them, there used to be a guy that came here. He lives in Prescott and he'll come by and pick up and then deliver. That used to be a service they provided.
Yes, you can arrange through them to do that. They periodically hit several different stores in the area, like Yavapai College, and I think some of the hardware stores where you can drop it off and they will pick it up for you and deliver it. You can arrange to have it delivered to your house. I don't remember if there's an extra charge for that or not.
The last
guys-
time I dropped a table saw blade off, I had to meet Roy at an auto parts store in Prescott Valley. It was like a clandestine meeting, and he said his people have all changed. They nearly ran him out of business while he was out on a trip with his wife, and he's trying to come back. But I tried to get him to get with what's the little artisan shop that's up on Willow Creek. I said, why don't you set up something with them where we can drop off blades? But he told me, Spence, that his biggest chunk of his business is actually making new bandsaw blades for these wood, the industrial timber turners, timber strippers that run them through these things like crazy.
You guys
So
might
he
recall,
does sharpen table saw blades. I just don't know if he sharpens bandsaws. Worth a call. But you might have to meet him somewhere, or go to his shop. The other thing I was going to mention on bandsaw blades is Pine Woodworking has a video and PDF that might be available for tuning up your bandsaw as well as your table saw. And they're both excellent. They go through all the things you guys mentioned in terms of blade changes, adjustments to the blade, different thicknesses and the teeth and the what's good to clean them with. And they're both pretty good. It took me a couple hours to go, a couple hours on the table saw to go through because I had to adjust my top as well, reference to the blade, but they're excellent sources. You don't have to go through that every time. You just go through the steps.
And what was that source?
Fine Woodworking.
Fine
magazine.
Woodworking?
Turn off my, you guys are getting road noise here. I'm in New Orleans going to the World War II museums tomorrow.
Ah,
Gonna join some family members this afternoon and we're gonna spend 2-3 days here.
very nice.
Yeah,
Where are you right now, Pete?
I'm on the roof of the Higgins Hilton Hotel across the street from the
But what city? What?
New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans. Okay.
Well,
Gentlemen, just as a little background, in June of last year, I contacted McGinnis Saw and we were trying to negotiate discounts for the club. It was difficult to get responses from them. I'm looking at an email I got on June 16th of last year. I have 2 phone numbers in Spence. Here's a couple phone numbers that you might already have these. One is 928-499-9369. And the other one is, I think the one Ken gave, 928-632-9405. What was interesting is they said they were in transition and changing their business model, where I don't think they were going to do pickup and delivery. Gas prices were too high, and there's a few excuses, and all legitimate. But what I found interesting is when I asked them for pricing, they sent me an invoice for $150.02. And the invoice has all these different things on it. No planer blades, but that doesn't mean they don't sharpen them. But it's got 10-inch carbide saw blades, router bit blades, a couple of different things here that I thought were pretty interesting. But it does give you the price rate, but I don't see planer blades on here. But then I didn't ask for those either, so who knows? But anyway. Hope that helps. We were never able to negotiate anything with them because it was just too difficult to communicate with them. And we didn't have a method of getting blades to them or picking them up. And it was just a little bit too complex. And Mark was involved in this too. He had some others. Meanwhile, an email from Dean Humphrey. Dean suggested Valley Saw in West Phoenix for blade sharpening. And we didn't have a lot of luck negotiating anything with them either, but it's an option that maybe you want to talk to them about planer blades.
Okay, what else? Pete, you mentioned about table saws. What all was in that article about what you have to do to maintain a good table saw? Mine just sits there.
The stuff I do on a regular basis is I clean the saw blade. I also clean the surface of the saw. The saw blade will pick up gum and it will start to impact the ability to give you a clean cut. So I have a little cleaning arrangement for that. Cleaning solution, Rockler makes them and all the other guys make them. But I also clean the top, and unlike what Mark does, I use mineral spirits on the top because it cleans the gum. And then I clean it with denatured alcohol because it removes any of the residue and the smell. And then I put the wax on because the denatured alcohol will evaporate very fast. And then I put it's actually car wax, Carnapa wax that I put on all the cast iron tops. But the other thing I do, of course, is try to set the 0 stop, the 45-degree stops. I have a great little digital angle gauge by Wixie that I set the true, the vertical of the blade. And then I have another one by Woodpeck that I do set the trueness of the blade to the groove on the cast iron top. And I also set the fence to the groove. So those are the things I go through in that article and video on Fine Woodworking, go through all that. And maybe once or twice a year, maybe once a year or twice every other year, I'll have to set the table saw, because if any of you guys try to move your table saw on the top, if the bolts underneath aren't completely locked down, you can move that table saw relative to the base. And that's when you start to have misalignment between the saw blade arbor and then the groove, which is going to cause kickback. So that's another half an hour project to do that. But and everybody's table saw is a little different. Mine has 3 bolts. And so the one bolt is a pivot. You release the other 2, and then you pivot on the one remaining bolt. But Powermatic's different, jets are different from the saw stuff. But those are the kind of things I do on the table saw. It has kept me out of trouble.
Yeah, just to add to what Pete said, I really like the Wixie digital. That works well. I do the same process pretty much, except for the fence and the blade to keep it perpendicular. I use a machinist square. You can buy a high quality machinist square pretty inexpensively. And I found that they hold true. And it seems to be a little bit more accurate, especially when you're cutting segments.
If you buy a Powermatic saw, in the setup booklet that comes with it, it takes you through aligning the blade and using a digital. I have a digital thing that runs in the track for the square, and you can check the front and the back of the tooth with that digital, and you can get that right on. And like Pete said, the nice thing about that is when you make a cut with that saw, after you've got it lined up, you have no burn marks, you have no chatter. It really helps with the quality of your cut if you do that a couple times. Usually the first time I got it real close. The second time I got it right on. So it's worthwhile for those manuals.
I meant to show you guys one time on one of the other videos that we're doing, but I read a tip in Fine Woodworking, and the guy made a little, he took 2 pieces of MDF or Baltic birch, glued them together, cut them in a 2-inch square, and then he put 2 little magnets underneath them. And if any of you guys have ever tried to cut a fairly short piece repeatedly through a fence with the fence, you're going to get in trouble with that. So the best thing they taught this trick was to take your fence, line it up 2 inches longer than you want to actually make your short cut. And then you put this little spacer block in there in front of the blade, about 4 inches, 6 inches. And that way you're cutting off you're lining up the cut for the repeated cut. And then it falls away from that cutoff block. And it will avoid, again, kickback issues. Trying to ride that piece right through between the blade and the fence is a dangerous thing to do. I'll bring it in the next time, maybe at one of the meetings. It's just a handy little tool, and then 2 little magnets on there. And Rick's got a couple of packs of those. 2 little magnets will do it. I lose you?
Well, let's see what's going on here.
It looks like Rick Davis is sharing his screen.
Done. I fixed it, took it off.
Okay.
But that's kind of all I do on on the table saw, and like Rick said, our manual has got a lot of that in there, but it's easier to see a video to see somebody actually go through it. And this woman goes through it. She does a fabulous job on that video. If you guys have access to that or the printed version of it, so.
Okay, anything else on table saws?
I don't have anything on table saws, but Bruce, I have another source of sharpening service that I will share. And this guy, I'm going to hold it up here like Pete did. This guy, the General Sharpening, and the phone number, I don't know if I can get it right here, but
Can't see the phone number.
yeah. Okay.
Pull it back towards you a little, Mark.
Okay, the phone number is 928-713-1128. He lives in Chino Valley, and I have the address here if someone wants it. But the story with this guy, it's a previous coworker. I worked with him when I was still working. A great guy, but he started this sharpening service. He actually bought it from somebody, a friend of his, and he's doing apparently a really good service. He has a mobile unit that he drives. His wife is into animal showing and that type of thing. So he drives this mobile service all over the West. And so he does the sharpening of shears and cutters and all that stuff with this mobile service. But when he's home, he does some sharpening. I ask, his name is Alan. I ask Al for a price sheet and information on email and via phone. He never gave me one. And I tried at least 3 times. So I just kind of gave up. But I'm sharing this because maybe somebody else wants to try and check it out, see if they have better luck than I did. But again, he's a really friendly, nice guy. But I don't know the quality of his work. We could try it out, I suppose. But anyway, I just throw it out there just to let you know that it's possible. The address, if is anybody interested in his address?
Maybe you could send it to Kathy and she could put it, or she doesn't do notes anymore.
Okay. Well, you have the phone number now, so if you get a hold of him, maybe you can just ask for the address then. But anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there just in case.
Vance, it sounds like if this guy does scissors, he might have all the equipment he needs to sharpen planer blades too. Might be worth contacting the guy to ask that question.
Well, and again, I asked for a price sheet. You know, what would you charge to sharpen planer blades or saw blades or what? And he promised me, yeah, I'm putting that together and I'll get it to you. But he never did it. So maybe somebody will have better luck than I did. I was working with Jay trying to put together a discount, you know, and see if we could get a club discount on it, but it just didn't follow through. But again, maybe somebody else might have better luck.
I'm going to jump in during the pause here. Speaking of Jay and discounts, I had a conversation the other day with Oneida. I ordered a bass, a mobile bass for my drum. And I think a couple of you on the call have Oneida dust extractors. But I asked her, I said, do you guys have any discounts set up for Prescott area woodturners? And she said, no, we've never been contacted. But she was kind enough to give me free shipping, which was about 19% discount as it was. So I just thought I'd mention that, Jay. And as the group, number of people continue to buy more of these supercells, it might be worth contact. But they were very, very helpful.
So Pete, you must have an invoice or something and contact information for them. Would you share that information with Jay? And so maybe he can follow up with it and contact them, see what we can work out. I would appreciate if you did that.
Okay.
Okay, what's the other piece of equipment? How about drum sanders? What do we have to do to maintain those?
First of all, somebody could teach me how to make that belt track straight without running off to the side.
Well, that's some fine tuning there, eh? You just got to get it just right.
And I tell you, there must be a very fine area because I can't stop it from going in towards the motor side of the thing, and it starts to fray the belt on the side. I have tried it every way I know how, and several times I can't get it to track straight.
You know, I did mine not too long ago because the conveyor belt tore in half. So I had to put a new conveyor belt on. And when I did the alignment, I kept playing with it and it kept going back and forth in each direction, like a drunk going down a road. And when I actually read the manual, it said it's very sensitive. We want you to do no more than a quarter of a turn in each time, or even less than that. So that's the trick I saw, Rep, was, you know, you overcompensate. You're going too much in the, you know, to try to straighten it out. Really 10-degree increments was what I found better.
I can't get mine to move in one direction no matter what I do. It always goes the one direction. And I tried to get a hold of Laguna because they're the ones that take care of that.
Yeah.
I probably should have looked under a igloo in Alaska for their help because I could not get back. They wouldn't help. They never even got back to me.
Well, you buy me a cup of coffee, I'll come over there and we'll work on there and see if we can't get it going.
You're on. You'll even get a sandwich or a donut with it.
But on the drum, the other thing I do to the jet sander that I have is it's always difficult to get that cantilever drum so that it's parallel to the conveyor base. And if it's not, then you end up when I would do cutting boards where I'd see it the most on a 12-inch, 18-inch cutting board, you'd end up being 4, 5, 10 thousandths difference in cut if you weren't perfectly square on that, perpendicular on that cantilever drum. And you can adjust that, but again, it's that adjustment's a little bit cruder with 7/16 diameter bolts, but it can be done. But that's the one thing I do. And then make sure I also clean that drum with again whatever cleaners you're going to use. End up with denatured alcohol or something to keep it dry, and that's what's helped quite a bit.
I bought mine from Timber and it was already all together. And I really am seriously thinking about taking it all apart and starting over again, that maybe they didn't assemble something correctly. And at least if I do that, I'll know, you know, where it is. Hopefully I'll know where it is.
Well, Pete, what a novel idea to read the instructions.
My wife
You
is
know, I'm going to tell this story about Dan Hall and his jet lathe. And Rick knows this story too, because he was there. Rick and I went to Dan Hall to help him install a new power supply for his lathe, because it wouldn't come on. And Rick knows it too, what happened, but you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we went over there and took the old one off and put the new one on very carefully, putting all the wires and everything where it belonged, and went to turn it on and still wouldn't come on. You know, when we were absolutely certain that everything was the way it's supposed to be, following the schematic wires and everything. So I picked up the instructions, and lo and behold, there's a little note in the instructions to reset the power supply. Take the safety switch out of the front of it. There's a little switch there that you pull that out and then put it back on for the start stop thing. And so I told Dan, I said, hey, that safety switch up there, take it out and plug it back in. He said, what's that going to do? And I said, just do it. We tried everything else. Nothing works. So he did. And I'm not telling this story because to say how great Mark found an answer or anything. I'm just service to everybody else. So anyway, he did. And I said, now turn it on. And it came on. So it was kind of weird. Everybody that I tell the story to says, what would that have to do with the power supply? Well, turns out that was the way it was designed. That little piece of plastic that fits in that on-off switch was the key. So if all else fails, read the directions.
Ken, or should I?
What?
Let Ken tell you about that. We tried. He had problem with his leg, and I said, "Well, you tried taking that switch out." He took it out. It didn't do anything. It was in the
No, it
magic.
didn't work. And in fact, I think there was a misinterpretation of the instructions. I'm looking at them here right now. And it says if a power outage occurs, the lathe will not immediately restart. When power resumes, cycle the on switch to restart. Above that, it says the safety key can be removed to prevent unauthorized use of the lathe. The safety key must be inserted to restart the lathe. So the safety key has to be in there for the switch to operate.
Right.
But the safety key itself has nothing whatsoever to do with the electronics of that switch. I looked at the schematic diagram just to make sure. There is no way that little safety switch has anything to do with the electronic control. However, it has to be in place to turn the switch on and off. Based on my recent experience with the switch, it's possible that you just inadvertently flip the switch one more time and it had some dust in it and it cleared then. So it just happened to happen when you messed with that thing. I did that first time when I had the problem because I knew you had related that with Dan's. It didn't do anything for me at all.
Well, I don't know what the answer to that, if it's related or not. All I know is it worked.
It's not.
So anyway, just read the directions, and Dan ended up with the power supply that he didn't need to buy, and that's probably the first time he had it replaced. I think Jet paid for it, but this one he had to buy himself, which was about $1,000, I think. Wasn't that the price, Rick?
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, All I know is it worked, whatever happened there. So,
Yeah, because when Ken called me, I said, well, this is what I know that we did, and it worked, but it did not have any effect on his lathe at all.
so anyway, word to the wise.
No, both of them are working. That's the upside.
Sometimes you just have to remember coincidence is not causation.
Right. Well, when all else fails, try something.
Yep.
All right, what else do we want to talk about that we need to maintain? Is that about it?
That's about it.
I think so, Bruce. I don't have anything else from here.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining. Appreciate it very much. And
You're welcome. Thank you
we-
for doing it.
we
Yeah.
will see you next time.
Thanks again, Bruce. Appreciate
Good.
you hosting this.
Good job, Bruce. Appreciate it.
All righty. Thanks, guys.